Together with an aging and rapidly expanding population, dementia presents enormous challenges to the society in the 21st century. In the last year, David Cameron described dementia as one of the biggest social and healthcare challenges we face. So what exactly is dementia? It is a range of symptoms including problems with communication and reasoning, mood changes, and memory loss. Although more common in the older population, dementia is not a part of the normal aging process. It is caused by distinct diseases of the brain and not general decline associated with getting older. The most common disease associated with dementia is Alzheimer's, which comprises 62% of all cases. We will focus on Alzheimer's in this presentation. The challenge presented by Alzheimer's is significant. It is currently estimated that there are 800,000 sufferers in the UK alone, and forecasts indicate that this figure will double in the next 40 years. Considering that £23 billion is already spent in UK supporting dementia patients, the future impact of dementia on the economy will be increasingly straining. This explains the sense of urgency that many share in discovering a cure for this cruel condition. It is with this in mind that we approach the focus of our study, thus long-term exposure to aluminium have a link to cognitive decline associated with dementia. Indeed, it is proposed for several decades that this is the case. We hope to discover what the most recent scientific research has to say on this issue and consider if reduced exposure to aluminium is a significant and realistic preventive measure in developing dementia. To gain an insight into how dementia patients relate to their families and how the medical profession seeks to relate to them, we've conducted 2 interviews, one with Jeff and Joy Bader, whose parents are now in residential care, and the other with Dr. Bashir Mohamad, who interacts with such patients during his work.
So, from your observation, what is the effect of dementia on the families of the patients?
First of all, I think objectively we've got to try and recognise, haven't we? And then the other difficulty is getting through to them, for themselves to recognise that there's something a little bit amiss. But of course, you've got to be careful of their self-esteem. So now I think our main thing is to make them realise there's still quality of life and motivate them. Isn't it? The issue is that we've tried to maintain that they have ownership of all the decisions.
He's still fairly capable of making a decision.
But I think it's important that what they think is being done is what they wanted and what they've had some input into. For obvious reasons, they will want to remain private all the time, and they're reluctant to share their inner feelings. I think we also found that there was a certain resentment about people going into the house, wasn't there?
They didn't like anybody going in or interfering with them.
It can be exasperating because she'll ask the same question repeatedly, and even within 2 or 3 minutes it's the same question. But I think they both acknowledge that they couldn't do it without some form of care.
You know that.
So in some respects, having recognised that there's a problem, we can relax now, and it takes
a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, because we're not exactly young ourselves. And when you think of 75-year-olds running around after 90-year-olds, you know, there should be somebody running around after us. But that's another story, isn't it?
What difficulties do you face when treating patients suffering from dementia?
People who have dementia have difficulty in communication, and this makes us unable to appreciate their needs and demands. Also, they are unable to tell us what problems they have, what suffering, what symptoms. Also, it is difficult to have or to obtain a consent for them to treat those patients. The demands of the people who have dementia are variable, and this will be another issue to be considered.
Can we talk a bit about medication?
Patients with dementia do not appreciate the value of their medications, and they are not reliable to take their medications in the right dose in the right time. And this will enforce the value of having the social services.
What special requirements or needs do you have to take into account when treating patients with dementia?
We have to take in consideration, first of all, the level of dementia, whether the patient has mild dementia or advanced dementia. Also, we need to take in consideration whether those patients do have social support or family, for instance, sons or daughters, and whether they live with them or far from them. So those matters, including the capacity of the patient to make good communication, should be taken in consideration in this regard.
Before we explore this deeper, it's important to understand the neuropathological mechanisms of the disease, that is, how it develops and progresses at a cellular level. It was once thought that dementia was simply a consequence of getting older. However, in 1901, a certain Dr. Alzheimer observed a 51-year-old patient who presented odd behavioural symptoms and short-term memory. When the patient finally died, Dr. Alzheimer requested to examine her brain and found unusual protein plaques and tangles in the brain tissue. He postulated that these plaques and tangles were the cause of this strange disease, which later came to be named after him. Neurologists call these beta-amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles. Amyloid is a protein fragment produced normally by the brain. This protein is derived from the amyloid precursor protein, APP, which is located in neuronal membranes. Enzymes then cut APP at different sites, producing different kinds of fragments. In a healthy neuron, alpha secretase and gamma secretase snip APP in two sites, releasing healthy fragments. In Alzheimer's disease, beta secretase makes the first cut, followed by gamma secretase as normal. This enzymatic action releases a fragment called beta amyloid. These fragments are insoluble and gradually accumulate within the brain, forming plaques. As the plaques increase in size, they have an increasingly toxic effect. Contrary to the beta amyloid plaques, which are located outside of the neurons, neurofibrillary tangles have a destructive effect in the intracellular environment. Within many cells of the body are structures called microtubules. These can be thought of as train tracks within the cell, a pathway for cellular cargo to be transported to different sites inside a cell. A protein called tau is necessary to stabilize the microtubule structure. Alzheimer's patients have abnormal tau protein, which results in the disintegration of the polymer structure of the microtubule. Essentially, this malformed protein results in the breakdown of transport within a neuron, meaning that the cell is starved of the nutrients. This causes the affected neurons to wither and shrink. Consequently, the neurons cannot form as many connections with other neurons and thus consolidate memories. Over time, the shrinkage of individual neurons results in the overall atrophy of the cortex itself. In investigating whether there is a link between dementia and long-term exposure to aluminium, it would seem clear that if there is a correlation, aluminium somehow promotes the formation of these plaques and tangles. We'll now listen to Sophia, a chemistry undergraduate student here at the University of Sheffield, as she explains some of the properties of aluminium relevant to these processes.
Aluminium is a chemical element in group 3 of the periodic table. It's sometimes known as group 13. It has atomic number 13, meaning it has 13 protons and 13 electrons, 3 of these electrons being in its outermost shell. Aluminium is a silvery grey, ductile and non-magnetic metal which is very resistant to corrosion. This explains its wide use in everyday products such as cars, kitchen foil and LED lighting. The most useful compounds of aluminium are those where aluminium has been reacted with oxygen or sulfur. These are called aluminium oxides and aluminium sulfates. Aluminium is the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust after oxygen and silicon. As oxygen and silicon are non-metallic, this means that aluminium is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust. As aluminium is so reactive, it is rarely found in the pure form as just aluminium. It is found in over 270 different minerals, the most common being an ore called bauxite. The main mining areas for bauxite are Australia, Brazil, China, India, Guinea, Indonesia and Jamaica. Aluminium can be present in 3 different oxidation states, +1, +2 and +3. An oxidation state is defined as a number assigned to an element in a chemical combination which represents the number of electrons lost or gained by an atom of that element in a compound. Most compounds formed by aluminium contain aluminium of oxidation state 3+. Almost all of these compounds are colourless. For general use in everyday items, aluminium is almost always alloyed. An alloy is a mixture of 2 elements, one of which is a metal, in this case aluminium. Alloys often have properties that are different to the metals that they contain. Alloys contain atoms of different sizes which distorts the regular arrangement of atoms. This makes it more difficult for the layers to slide over one another, so alloys are harder than the pure metal. Alloying a metal for everyday use improves its mechanical properties, so it is made to last longer, giving a higher quality. The main alloying agents are copper, zinc, magnesium, manganese and silicon. For example, drinks cans, which you think would be 100% aluminium, are only 92 to 99% aluminium, as it is alloyed. Aluminium is needed in many industries for many uses, such as transport, cars, planes, trains and bikes. It is also used in cans, tins and kitchen foil, and in many cooking utensils. Powdered aluminium is also used in paint, pyrotechnics and rocket fuel. Aluminium can also be used to produce hydrogen gas by reacting it with sodium hydroxide or hydrochloric acid. And in some countries, even the coins are made of aluminium, such as France, Italy, Poland and Finland. It is even used on a MacBook Pro and Air outer casing. Global production of aluminium in 2003 was 30,449,000 metric tonnes. It was the second most widely produced metal that year behind iron. 10 years on, in 2013, the annual global production of aluminium was 53,966,000 metric tonnes. This is quite a large increase in global production, and this is probably due to the high demand for the metal in our lives every day, now such as transport and electronics, which have increased greatly in usage over the past 10 years. But could all this exposure to aluminium be posing any risks to our health? This documentary will discuss the health risks associated with aluminium exposure, as there has been many studies into the link between a high aluminium exposure and the onset of Alzheimer's disease.
Scientists have been debating the link between aluminium exposure and Alzheimer's disease for many decades. The first case to offer a possible glimpse into the association between aluminium exposure and cognitive decline was reported in 1921 by Spofford et al. Almost a century later, scientists are still unable to provide a clear mechanism of pathogenesis. Throughout the years, much research and studies have been carried out and published, and many incidences have occurred. In 1951, a paper published investigated epilepsy occurring in animals as a result of injecting aluminium into brain tissue. In 1988, the infamous Camford water incident led to the contamination of water by aluminium sulfate in Cornwall, UK. Development of memory and cognitive decline symptoms were reported, and a follow-up study was carried out by Altman et al. This is what Dr. Martin Cambry-Deacon, a senior lecturer in the Department of Biomedical Science at the University of Sheffield, has to say about this incident.
And I believe you're aware of the Camelford incident in 1988. I'm not, unfortunately, but 20 tonnes of aluminium sulfate contaminating the water supply. And it's recently emerged that people in their 50s have died prematurely from dementia. And that post-mortem results have shown that there's high concentration of aluminium in the brains. Do you think that could be a valid correlation?
It could certainly be a correlation, but what you have to be very careful of is assigning causality to a correlation. And the study has to show that, yes, there may be higher levels of aluminium in there than you might expect, but has that actually caused significant damage? The aluminium was not ever going to be easy to get rid of from certain parts of the body. That was always going to be the case, that in the brains of people who'd had that large influx of aluminium, there would be more aluminium around. The question is, has it caused any damage? Have the accumulations of aluminium just happened as part of a protective mechanism that has actually worked and restricted any damage from the aluminium, and whatever has caused, say, other inclusions in the brain, apart from the normal pattern of aging, or perhaps early onset Alzheimer's disease in a particular group of people that would have got it anyway if they hadn't had the aluminium.
Aluminium has been associated with the formation of amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles. typically seen in Alzheimer's disease patients. The amyloid cascade hypothesis states the accumulation of amyloid beta proteins participate in Alzheimer's disease development. Aluminium has been associated with amyloid beta proteins and has proven to encourage their formation in vitro. In general, a higher level of aluminium was found in Alzheimer's disease patients. Research has reported the effects of aluminium on over 200 reactions in the body and has highlighted the specific oxidation state of 3+ as an effector. The table summarizes the main areas affected by aluminium, including gene expression, energy metabolism, phosphorylation, neurotransmitters, and channel inhibition. Many arguments have been placed forward to dismiss the association between aluminium exposure and Alzheimer's disease, two of which include the ability of the body's internal mechanisms to excrete any excess aluminium and the inability of large amounts of aluminium to enter the blood-brain barrier into the brain. However, it has been noted only a small amount of aluminium is required to affect the structure and function of brain tissue. The majority of current research being published shows a significant correlation between aluminium exposure and Alzheimer's disease. This is Dr. Martin Camby-Deacon giving us his views on the topic.
What's your opinion of long-term exposure to aluminium and developing dementia?
I think at the moment probably the evidence that I've seen is that it's not a proven case. Although there is evidence, clear evidence that aluminium is a toxin, and that is a toxin that can impact on the nervous system, whether it is genuinely a causative factor in Alzheimer's disease, I think the jury's still out on.
To conclude, aluminium is classified as a neurotoxin and is a possible risk factor in the development of Alzheimer's disease. Research into this topic is ongoing.